Man, welcome back to Abe's Auto. It's been a minute. We've been at the track all day, watching cool people do cool things and cool cars, racing, speeding. I got the hat on. It's hot. It's gleaming. Man, it's from Walmart though. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be real comfortable. We out here at Atlanta Speedway,
Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Atlanta Motor Speedway with my boy. Go ahead.
How you doing? It's Malachi once again. Got a different car this time, so he wanted to do another interview. And they ramming out here. They getting lit. They getting litty. You already know Atlanta Motor Speedway. They having a car show, but we're separate. SCCA Autocross. They got a lot of different events at the racetrack. So what just passed me is another event. They doing their thing. I just got finished with SCCA Autocross, but once again, we're out here having a good time with cars. No matter what your build, we're using.
So Malachi, man, it's been a minute. This don't look like the Lincoln Towncar. So what you driving? What you rolling in?
So I'm rolling in a 1996 C4 Corvette, or just Corvette base model. Not too impressive, but LT1, 4-speed, 4L60E transmission. But it's a deal popped up, and I'm a fan of any Corvette. I was actually looking for like a 3rd gen Camaro or Firebird, but when a guy offered this, I'm like, oh, this is literally performance-wise all around better. Way like lighter power to weight ratio, better, just kind of all around what I was looking for. So, and I'm a fan of any Corvette in general, so I hopped on it. But the mods I've done, go into the mods.
Yep.
The mods I've done were just these are ZR1 rims and tires. So it's 17 by 11 in the rear, 17 by 9.5 up front. Mickey Thompson's all around. 355 wide in the rear. That's about 11 inches wide rear tire setup, and 275s up front. So it's just a grippier setup all around. It was lowered on, they have something called wheel chucks. So it has a mono-leaf suspension, pretty much just one long leaf spring on the front and the rear. That's how all Corvettes were designed up until the C8. And we're going to let the beats pass. There's a whole other show happening. And we're going to let that pass. And all right, and we're back. So with the suspension, we had to do had lowering chucks installed up front to get that lowered, to get it lowered up front. Then we had lowering bolts in the rear to lower the leaf springs in the rear. It doesn't flush as much as I'd like it to in the rear, but it's lowered all around, so about an inch all around, just to give it an all around better handling package. It's better than the Lincoln, so it's an improvement. I still have the Lincoln, so I didn't just trade up, but yeah, it's an all-around improvement for autocross.
All right.
Right for the application.
Right for the application, huh? So are you making better times, similar times? What are we doing?
Definitely making better times. I usually, whatever the time is for that track, it's like, okay, say, for example, the fastest time of the layout of that course, it varies from, week to week or event to event. The average is like 60 seconds, about a minute. In the Lincoln, I'm usually 10 seconds over because it's so heavy. In the Corvette, I'm about 5 seconds over because I'm still getting used to like the power, the grip. It's a completely different animal. So not much of an animal, but it's more of a, once again, right for the application. So I'm averaging about 65 compared to other faster times. So compared to the other Corvettes, I'm in the back, but I'm not too far off. So it's definitely an improvement.
All right. So let me ask you this: is it manual?
It is an automatic. Once again, 4L60E.
He ain't learned his lesson, everybody.
Okay, so here's the thing: don't doubt automatics. If I could get a manual, if anybody knows anything about 4th gen manuals, they come with a 6-speed. They're very great, but a car that's 26 years old, you'd have to replace like the master cylinder, throwout bearing, just everything related to the transmission. And at the same time, it was a deal that popped up. I was looking for a Pontiac Firebird, a Camaro, or like a C10 pickup truck, or even on the 4-cylinder JDM side, maybe like a Honda Integra or a Honda Civic. But in my shopping, neighborhoods, Facebook, a guy who I was trying to buy a truck from, and he was setting the price for a C10 for about maybe $7,000. But he had this Corvette sitting in his driveway, running and driving. Well, he didn't drive it, but it still ran. He offered this for sale too, and he was like for $4,000. And I'm like, oh. Well, I'll take anything Corvette. So, yeah, and, I accepted the deal, automatic or not. The automatics, the 4L60Es have a bad rep because too much torque. They generally snap the 3rd, 4th gear clutches. But the deal is, it's just the heat. As long as you find a way to manage the heat, that kind of like either like transmission coolers or any like front air dam under the front lip of the Corvette, that kind of helps keep all the heat mediated. And they relatively handle pretty good. They're on the safe side in that regard.
Okay. So
yeah.
What brakes are you running, by the way? Because we talked about the tires. What brakes? Did we talk about the wheels?
We did talk about the wheels. I did say there were ZR1 17 by 9 staggered wheels.
So what about these brakes though?
The brakes are stock, believe it or not. They are like, they may be some ceramic padding, but I just had them replaced with like new rotors, new brakes. Really, any new brake upgrades is better than what it was before. Once again, the car was sitting. The brakes worked, but the padding was weak, and the rotors were the original that came with the car. It was like rust all around it. So any modern new set of pads and rotors is good, but the calipers are stock. Everything regarding the brakes is pretty much stock, just new. And
what about, so let me ask you, is it a T-top?
It is not a T-top. It is a Targa top. Targa top, i.e. the entire roof can be removed. There are 4 bolts up. Sorry, there are 2 bolts up front and then 2 bolts in the rear. You just unbolt those and the whole thing comes off. And you just place it in the trunk and it places in pretty nicely. And that's pretty much it. There's a difference between a Targa and a T-top. T is literally the shape T. Targa, it's the whole roof. So
my bad, everybody. The lingo.
Yeah. But no, that's fine. I don't know. Yes, they
had a little slight intermission. So let's talk about the interior real quick. So
the interior is more or less stock. I'm sorry, there's stuff in there, but I replaced it has power. It comes with power seats, but the power seats didn't really work. So got them replaced with some Corbu racing seats. A little bit more roomier, a little bit more adjustable. They're manual, but like for a Corvette, it's only 2 seats. You don't really need automated seats. It does make the car slightly lighter. Those power seats are like, God, it's like 300 per seat because of the electric motors, 90s, everything was heavy. I do have so Corbu C4 racing, no, A4 racing seats. That's the name of the seats. Regular seat belts in there. Does have the holes for the racing harnesses, but I have to install like a whole rear cage if I want to do a racing harness. So we're gonna save on that. Still regular automatic shifter. Quick release steering wheel. So it's from Grant Racing. It's not a Momo or a NGR. It's from Grant Racing. It's an American brand. Like anytime you see an old school GT40 or any classic muscle car, that's honestly the brand they go with. I just replaced the emblem, the horn, with a Chevy one just to match the decor. But yeah, that's pretty much it interior wise. Just aftermarket seats, aftermarket steering wheel, nothing much. But it all blends to the car. So
all right. So let's see. I love it. So any upgrades to the radio? And the
stock
dash?
Radio, just a regular cassette player. If you don't remember what a cassette player is, good. You don't need to know about it. It's terrible because it doesn't work. Once again, 26-year-old car. But yeah, even the auxiliary cassette player thing, that doesn't even work. So that I plan on removing at some point in the future. But yeah, just factory radio.
So like I said, so we went racing today. I was in the passenger seat. We had to put the seat all the way back. So you see that seat versus his seat. And it's a tight fit.
It is a tight fit. Once again, 90s Corvette, but using the 80s design. So once again, cars from the 80s and 90s were relatively tight, so it's funny back in those days, but they moved. So performance was always there.
All right, let's go to the front of the vehicle.
It definitely needs some paint, a paint job done, but you can tell this is definitely sitting in a guy's driveway. But
not too bad though.
Yeah, not peeling. It could have been way worse. I've seen way worse, but it's just the clear coat right off in the seal, cracking a little bit here and on the pop-up headlights, but it's not too extensive. It's still manageable.
And then so let's go ahead, walk it. It's looking good, honestly. It's clean. Did you have any leaks? Let's ask that question.
Believe it or not, well, no, people know this. The Targa tops, T-tops from this whole era, today, like years later, they do tend to leak. But surprisingly, with the Targa top, it's not that bad because the whole roof itself is still a seal, and the dry rotting of the rubber around the weather stripping, it is bad, but not to the point where it's leaking. It might leak when it rains. I've driven it in the rain. When it's in motion, I guess because it's not sitting, it doesn't leak at all, honestly. It's only when the car is sitting because water has enough time to seep in, and it's even then it's only at the where the rearview mirror is, because that seal is like right where more of the weather stripping is and where it cracks. That's like the only part where it leaks through, surprisingly. So
all right, are you using the caulking to fill that in?
I did use a little bit of not to fill it in with the rearview mirror, but I did use it around the seal, around where the driver's side window is, just a little bit of that, just for temporary. But it's enough. Like, it doesn't leak through as I'm driving in the rain. Yeah, there's even more dry right here, but surprisingly, nothing too extensive. It's not like water flooding in. You know, roll up the windows when it rains while you're driving. I stay completely dry. So
okay, can you pop the hood for us, please?
No problem. Right on the side.
So fairly large hood, honestly. Is this fiberglass?
This is a fiberglass hood. Yep. So the thing about most Corvettes, ever since its inception, you know, the C1 Corvette back in like the 1950s, they were all made from fiberglass.
Really?
That was the idea. For lightweight but affordable, it was made from fiberglass. Carbon fiber wasn't a thing yet. Even when carbon fiber came out, too expensive. It was never really integrated to any Corvettes until way later, like the 6th generation, back in like 2006 or 5 or something. So yeah, it's fiberglass for the most part. Fiberglass hood. When you open it, it literally reveals the entire engine bay, the front suspension, tire, everything, battery, computer, ECU. It's all right here under the engine bay.
So what mods have you done to this motor?
Not many mods at all, believe it or not, except for an aftermarket radio. A radiator. Mostly because the original radiator, it doesn't come on at a low enough temperature and it doesn't blow cool enough. Because the thing about these older LT1s, because of the higher compression ratio, what the engineers back in the 90s thought was to get it to pass emissions, run a higher compression ratio, burn more of the noxious gas in the exhaust. But the average temp of these motors was about 230 degrees Fahrenheit, which is insanely hot for any engine, period. But these LT1s fought through it, but for the fact that I'm racing it in autocross, revving it high, not ideal. So lower temp radiator, it averages like 190 degrees Fahrenheit at the hottest, which is perfectly fine. No other mods. I mean, I replaced, you know, pulleys, everything needs to be replaced just to get it running properly. Rear main seal, head gaskets, anything that leaks oil had to be replaced.
So what you think you making power wise?
So from the factory, they made like 300 horsepower. It's like stock LT1, 90s LT1, 350 Chevy. They made about 300 horsepower, 330 torque. To the wheels and factoring all the potential engine wear that could be in there. I mean, it changed the oil. It's not burning oil anymore, but just time and all that. It probably makes like 210 to the wheels. Probably maybe 270 torque to the wheels, because the torque is it pulls surprisingly pretty well. Like, it doesn't feel laggy or anything. I mean, even when I had Avery in the passenger seat, it still pulled pretty good at the low end. It's just at the top end, it's really noticeable how kind of dead it is on horsepower. So, but it's about 210 to the wheels.
You still like having pop-up headlights?
Yes, I love the pop-up headlights. You do not even realize. That's got to be the coolest. That was the first thing I ever replaced. You can see these are new headlight actuator motors, or new headlight motors. I got those replaced. I couldn't do it myself because like where I live, not allowed to pop the hood. Homeowners Association, whole ordeal. But thankfully, you know, there was a shop out in I think Alpharetta, I think, that was able to kind of replace them for me. It was really well done. Pop-up headlights still work. Maybe I'll show you later. It never gets old, mostly because, you know, not too many cars has that feature anymore. And it also it doesn't have the brass. It doesn't have that brass gear for any C4 Corvette owners looking into it. It doesn't have that. It just has the new motors and works perfectly fine. Just like, they worked for long periods of time. They never broke brand new. So, and that was for like 60,000 miles when owners would actually own them and consistently drive them back in those days. So for today, like, replace the headlight motors, you're good to go. So and it never gets old. It's very fun and interesting to watch every time, because it does a full 180 and everything.
I noticed this too. Is this a light right here?
Yes, those are engine bay lights. Those aren't wired properly, so they actually don't really work right now. But hopefully in the future, the thing is, anywhere I do pop the hood at, which is usually when I'm at work, it's a big parking lot, plenty of lights overhead. So thankfully, I've never had to really use those headlights, but use the engine bay lights. But it is a cool feature that I hope to get working someday. But after everything else, that's kind of on the bottom of the list, believe it or not.
So what are you trying? What's your power goals for this car?
Power goals long term, I'm not sure if I'm going to go Pro Charger or 383 stroker, but I'd like to see at least 400 horsepower to the wheels because this is a very light car, fastest car I've ever driven. Yes, I know I haven't driven every car. You can't own every car, and I don't feel comfortable driving other people's cars. I'm not playing this game. So 400 horsepower and a C4 Corvette is actually plenty, especially the fact that you can spin the tires in this car as is, even with these wider Mickey Thompsons. They still spin. I could probably do donuts if I wanted to, but my goal is to make the whole drivetrain last and use it in healthy ways. You know, daily driving and autocross surprisingly doesn't beat on it that much. So power, yeah.
So how's the transmission holding up to these? How's the car holding up all as a whole, in the transmission, the motor holding up to these autocrossing events?
Okay, so autocross, it holds up pretty well, but you know, C4 Corvettes do like to run hot. Even the C5s, I think some C5 owners will probably attest to that. But the temperature of the transmission, you know, they have gauges that'll let you go through all the oil temp, coolant temp, and even the trans temp. Pay attention to all C4 Corvette owners. Pay attention to the trans temp. It'll say auto, and it'll have, you know, the temperature on it. If it gets over 215 degrees Fahrenheit, danger zone. These don't come with transmission coolers. The transmission generally tends to get hot, which leads to the 4L60E 3/4 gear clutches failure. I forgot the proper name, but if you know the 4L60E and their Achilles heel, it's that, and it's due to heat. But for right now, and I think because the transmission cooler runs through the radiator, and it's the aftermarket radiator with cooling fans, and I have the front air dam, that helps manage the heat a lot better. But you know, it does get relatively hot. Like I was just average. I was like, once I got up to like 215, 220, I was like, okay, time to pack it up.
All right.
And I was after like 3 runs. So
my overall question is basically more of a maybe a statement or a question. I don't know. Right now it's hot, but you're basically just trying to mod it to preserve it.
Mod it to preserve it, but it's still usable. You know, like it's still autocross car. Still meant to be a great race car. Like, look up the World Challenge Corvette series back in like the 80s and 90s. They raced these C4 Corvettes even with the AC compressor and everything on it. All they did was remove the cats because they were on a racetrack. So these are all around practical, great sports cars, just managing the heats because the cars in that series were actually manuals. But I bought the 4L60E, but there are plenty of build kits for it, external transmission coolers, plenty of things to make this car last. And over time, I'd like to hopefully get a lot of those installed. So there's mosquitoes everywhere. I'm sorry, I keep slapping myself, but it's a very manageable car. It's just taking me time to get there, but you know, it manages the hour drive and it manages autocross pretty well in this, I think, 80-degree weather. So
let me, and one final question. This last question for the day is: could we see you with an LS in it?
I hope not. As good as the LS motor is, the LT1 is still a buildable platform. Yes, the OptiSpark distributor gets a bad rep, but here's the deal. The OptiSpark, which is the distributor, it's mounted in front on the LT1, right behind the water pump, which is bad because any moisture that gets behind there will cause the motor to misfire because of the distributor. But in the later years, the OptiSpark distributor had a external vent unit to actually get the moisture out. It's linked right into the where the air intake is. I'll show you a little bit closer. I can't show you where OptiSpark is, but this is where that moisture is vented through at, right through the intake inlet. And the OptiSpark, it goes all the way down into the OptiSpark, and that helps keep moisture out. And that's what manages any potential misfire. So I've driven it in the rain, you know, humidity, whatever, everything short of snow, because you know, it's Georgia, it hasn't snowed down here in a while. And it manages pretty well. So I'd like to build off this LT1. Once again, either 383 stroker or maybe heads, cam, and sorry, a Pontiac Firebird just passed by. But you know, maybe heads, cam, exhaust, and even a Pro Charger kit. Those are all options. Maybe not all at once, but And this LT1 is still worth building off of. So no LS swap in any potential future.
So, and one more question for the one more question. What's the timeline on that?
I have no idea. Looking at my finances and how much it cost me just to get this running in this condition, I just had to replace the fuel tank because it was leaking from the top because the rear hatch, like, you know, once again, the previous owner let it sit outside, no car cover. And the fuel tank, fun fact, let me show you. Where you refuel is right at the top. So it's right in the center. Right. So it's convenient because you don't have to worry about parking on the left or the right. But when it rains, it comes slap dab down in here and gets into the rubber boot, which was also worn out from the previous owner. But after replacing all that, like where the metal to metal, where the actual sending unit is, all of that was rusted and it started leaking from the top and water kept coming out. So after replacing that, you know, my pockets are looking pretty thin right now. So it'll be a while before any serious engine builds and transmission builds come, because with these C4 Corvettes, you can't build the engine without building the transmission. You have to do it all at once. So the rear axle is surprisingly strong. Dana 44. And you guys, the same rear axle that's in the Dodge Viper is also in this, or very similar rear axle. So independent rear suspension. So that's strong, but it'll be a while before I do any serious engine builds.
All right. Cool. All right, man. So that's my boy's Corvette. From what year?
1996.
1996. Man, it's a little monster. It's a beast.
It has potential.
It got potential. It got a lot of
beast with potential.
Beast with potential.
It's just starting from a way lower point. It's not a C5, no LS, but parts are there. Look up Callaway. Don't just look up the Callaway Sledgehammer. Look up everything Callaway C4 Corvette. That should give you an idea of the potential that this car has. I didn't even mention twin turbos, but there's more than just that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are plenty of twin turbo kits for this too, but that goes into straight up supercar territory, and that is definitely long out of my budget. But
man, go spend it.
These are
ramen noodles.
Stop.
Ramen noodles.
Stop.
Ramen noodles.
No,
not the good kind.
I eat ramen already. Darn it.
But man, we like to thank him. We like to thank the track out here. What's the go ahead and shout out the autocross?
SCCA, Sports Car Club of America, Atlanta region. You know, they host races once or twice a month. I mean, you can follow them on their website. Their schedule varies, but they all their races are usually out here, Atlanta Motor Speedway, in the lot, huge lot. It's once again SCCA Atlanta region. So just type that in on Google. That should link you to everything. It's usually the top link. So yeah, that's what I race with. Yeah, it'll get you there.
It'll get you there. Hey, man, but so man, much love. Do all the fun things, like, subscribe. The channel growing slowly but surely. I gotta drop another video for my birthday. So this video is like what, May? What is it? It's May. It's June.
June 2nd.
Time is an illusion, man. Hey, but hey, love y'all.
Time flies when you're at work.
Hey, man. Love y'all. Thank y'all for watching. Peace.